Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Geomologist Presents. Today, I have a special guest with me on the Geomologist, and that person is Del Teigler. You might know him for a lot of his sort of sword and sorcery art, especially, at least I know him from his work on Hyperborea, and he's done a lot of other stuff, and he's gonna talk about that today. And hopefully, we'll talk about extensively on sword and sorcery art and the genre of that. So thanks for joining me, Del. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Carl. Thank you. Just a word of clarification. The last name's pronounced Teigler. I know it's
Teigler. Oh
one
man.
of
Okay.
it's a little different. That's all right. So yeah, how are you doing, man? I'm doing really well.
I'm doing all right. Yeah. We had a little hiccup here in t our time connection, but hey, we're here. So
That's
so
it. That's it.
I met Del. I feel like I might have run into you at North Texas a few years back, but for sure, if not this year, last year, Del, you played in my Hyperborea game, and then um, Northwind Games, Northwind Adventures with Jeff Delanian's company, and Hyperborea was promoting their latest Kickstarter there, or was fulfillment was coming out, I believe. And you got to do one of the cover arts for that.
I did. Yeah, I got to do what was it? Seawolf's Daughter was one of them, and then I
Mm,
got to do the Oblation Slab of the Heptomancer is
yeah,
what it was with the sacrifice on the slab
yeah, a homage
all that.
to Frank Frazetta's painting, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. So Del, how did you start with gaming first or with art first?
Well, I think just like any other artist, you start drawing from an early age. So it was
Hmm.
definitely art first. I drew from the time I can remember, kindergarten, pre-kindergarten, all the way up. I just never put the crayons down, is what I like to say.
Huh.
But yeah, then when I was probably 10 or 11, a buddy of mine, Kurt, introduced me to basic Dungeons and Dragons, or what we thought was basic at the time. It was Holmes, and we mixed in sort of advanced Dungeons and Dragons after that,
Yeah,
just like everybody of
yeah, I think
that
a lot of
time
people did
frame
that. Like we
did.
had the monster manual from Advanced, and we're still using either the Holmes or the Moldvay, right? BX
Yeah,
ones.
absolutely, absolutely. So it was definitely art first, and then gaming. And I think intermixed in there was comic books too. I
Hmm.
started collecting, reading comic books, and I used to get the Marvel magazine size Conans, and those really stuck with me from an inking perspective, especially with John Buscema and Alfredo Acala,
Hmm.
among many others that were working on the Marvel Conan series. When it comes to gaming art, I think what really struck me was a lot of the early Monster Manual pieces for sure.
Hmm.
Russ Nicholson, once the Fiend Folio came out, was just an amazing example of pen and ink art at that time. And there are, obviously loads of others,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. So, any one specifically, or those are the ones you mentioned that kind of inspired you to, I guess, move towards this is a contributor in profession?
Yeah, so I mean Alfredo Alcala is in my mind the epitome of pen and ink. He used
Hmm.
quill and brush and in those old Marvel magazines. It's just amazing. And of course nobody can beat John Buscema on Conan, right? And so I
Hmm.
think that was really what's inspired me the most. And then as we got into gaming a bit more, it was definitely Russ Nicholson and a little bit of Larry Elmore in the old Red Box, and then some Jeff D thrown in there as well. So all those early artists were just amazing to me, um, and it just sparked the imagination and creativity. And it was just one of those things where it just kind of sparked off from there.
Yeah, so it seems the commonality is that these are artists who contributed a lot to Conan and the sword and sorcery genre. So, 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 how did you get to sort of? I mean, have you always? You said you started when you were like five, but when did you become like? I don't know if the word's professional or how does that
Yeah,
how
so,
did that work?
Right. So my full-time job is was a firefighter paramedic.
Oh wow.
And I
Okay.
work 24-hour
Well,
shifts.
thank you. That's awesome.
And so yeah, appreciate it. And so yeah, I had a lot of time, and before I had kids, I started drawing, and I posted some stuff up on Dragon's Foot
Hmm.
and a number of other, community forums back in the day that were very big. And I got a couple of pings from people, and they said, "Hey, what would you like, or would you like to do some art for us?"
Mm.
And I was like, "Sure, but I don't know how that works." Right.
Yeah.
So I had basically just taken a photo of some stuff and thrown it up there. And I think that Brian Fazakis and Ron Redmond found me on Dragon's Foot
Hmm.
initially, and they were both involved with And Magazine, or Ampersand Magazine, which was a
Okay.
free AD&D, D&D magazine back in the day. And they, produced quite a few of those. I think I started working with them, gosh, it had to been right around 2011, 2012. Did
Mm.
some free stuff for them. I ended up doing a cover for them in watercolor. Um, Looking back on it now, is very primitive, but yeah. So I got started doing just free work, and then
Yeah.
probably a year or so later, I got uh, contacted by Jeff Talanian from Northwind Adventures. He
Hmm.
was the first one to give me like a professional gig. So thanks, Jeff.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. So, but that's the fun thing is that I met you like playing Hyperborea, so I guess you always stuck with the game aspect of it, and I guess the game.
Right, right. Yeah, so back in those days, it was, I didn't know what was going on with the scene. I had been away from it for about 10 years.
Hmm.
I hadn't played really much of anything, hit or miss, one or two times a year is all. And I picked up Gygax magazine because Gygax was a big name in the industry, and back then Gygax magazine was a thing. And
Hmm.
I started reading Gygax magazine, and I saw this ad for this red box that was called at that time Astonishing Swordsmen and Sorcerers of Hyperborea. And I
Hmm.
was like, wow, that looks just like a cool, just the advertisement alone just spoke to me. And the art was, definitely a throwback to some of that old Marvel, you know, magazines of the 80s, right?
Yeah.
70s and 80s. And so I was like, man, it'd be cool to play that game. And then ironically, Jeff had contacted me like, I don't know, less than 6 months after I had seen that advertisement just out of the blue, and said, "Hey, would you like to work for me?" And he had a
Hmm.
couple of pieces for me to do some dinosaurs at
Yeah.
first, and he liked what I was able to produce. And it was like, it was weird that I had seen that ad and was like, "Man, I want to be involved with this." And then he contacted me, only a few months later, and sent me the box for free, and just so I could get, up to speed on it. And so
Hmm.
I'm a pretty loyal guy when it comes to that kind of thing, and his system is just amazing and harken back to old, homes, and basically how we played back in the day. Um, and so yeah, stuck with it and really enjoy his system, among other systems. And it's fortuitous that I was able to work on that product.
Yeah, there's a lot of contributions kind of just browsing or having browsed through your slideshow. So how would you describe your art? Because I see you did a lot of monster stuff, but this action, that's what I think is kind of cool. They're not stills. There's a few stills here and there, but it's like action, like things is a lot of stuff going on, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, so I really grew up, and that probably speaks to my comic background just a little bit. Like
The
I
comic
really
book, you
grew
mean?
up reading,
Yeah,
yeah, comic book. Yeah, I
yeah.
really grew up
Oh, that's cool.
reading, Amazing Spider-Man back in the day in the
Uh-huh.
90s, just before all the great artists, created Image Comics in the day. And it was,
Mm.
Todd McFarlane and Eric Larson and Bagley and they were just so dynamic. And when you look at fight scenes in a lot of the old school games, they just weren't dynamic. And I
Mhm.
really wanted to put some dynamism into my artwork. And so, yeah, I do a lot of monsters. I love doing monsters, right? Different takes on um, just your average monsters to the weird stuff too.
Mhm.
And but the combat and fight scenes, I really get into making them very, very dynamic and making sure that the figure looks heroic. Um, yeah, that's I think maybe what sets me apart just a little bit. I think there are other artists out there that do maybe just a little bit better job than I do, but yeah, I like to think that I'm pretty dynamic when it comes to doing
Yeah,
fight scenes.
everything's always in motion. Yeah, like I think it's a iconic picture from the Hyperborea, the Paladin, I think, which is like
Yeah,
all this magic going on and um, against
yeah,
an array of enemies and yeah,
that's
yeah.
always a challenge is the
Mhm.
magic and how
Mm.
to get your movement in there. And with that particular one, I don't think Jeff gave me much direction. We had settled on this was
Oh,
for
yes.
second edition, and we had settled on me doing some iconic characters
Hmm.
at some point. And I don't remember if I started just adding these iconic characters or if Jeff said, "Hey, let's do something iconic." So this is Andromeda, and we ended up doing um, quite a bit of work with Andromeda and NPC. Speaking of this Paladin
Hmm.
picture in general, and so we wanted to do something that was unique. And at first, I had kind of was just kind of standing there amongst all these zombies or undead, and
Hmm.
then I was like, well, she's up on top of a tomb. She's got to be. And I kind of worked around with how to place her in the scene, make her dynamic, but make her the center of attention. And yet, if you had her on her feet in that picture, she'd be off the page or be very small.
Hmm.
So, this makes it look to me, at least, in how I drafted it, was she just got up there and didn't have a chance to stand up yet. And so
Hmm.
she's, kind of forcing these undead back while she's on her knees. And yeah, so, it's definitely an atypical sort of representation, but I think it works pretty well.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, so I guess you do like portraits as well. At least.
Yeah, so for those characters, I did all of the iconic characters out of the 2E book. I did portraits for each of them
Um,
in just pencil, and we put together an NPC guide. Jeff did,
that Rogues
and
Gallery,
then
right? Is that the Rogues
yes, the
Gallery you're
Rogues
talking?
Gallery.
Hmm.
I believe it was Rogues Gallery 2 because I think the initial one was Val Semex's, who's another artist. He's actually a comic book artist by trade.
Hmm.
Val Smex does some of the 2E illustrations as well. And I think the Gallery 1 is in the back of the
Yeah,
hardcover for
right. Yeah.
2E.
Hmm.
And so we did Rogues Gallery 2, and that was interesting. David Prada and me and Jeff Talanian went back and forth on those,
Hmm.
creating those characters and making sure that if, David had put a weapon or a piece of equipment on their sheet, that they showed up in the illustrations as well.
Yeah, because I guess you have the illustrations of the first set, but not the second set. And this is like the second set, which are really great. I mean, I love these.
Yeah, and I think I did a full body pose on
Yeah, you did
some of those,
a
and
full
then
body pose. Yeah, on all of them. So it's like the portrait and then the full body. Yeah, when you mentioned
yeah,
Andromeda, I'm like, oh yeah, you did those too. That's great. So the action scenes for these characters and so does Jeff give you like brain to like, oh, this is the character, it's yours, and you figure it out, or does he give? How does this kind of collaborative process work?
yeah. So at the beginning of 2E, he sort of said, "Hey, I want to bring you on, and I want you to start working on some character classes." And I
Hmm.
said, "Okay." And he said that, all this is through email. We'd have some personal phone conversations, but most of it was through email. And I would just send him some draft sketches of what I was thinking.
Hmm.
It would start out super rough, kind of the character in general, and I think that's where a lot of those from the Rogues Gallery came from. I would do the full body pose, and I would
Hmm.
work out what their attire was going to be, what their uniform looked like, what their face or facial features and that kind of thing would look like, and I would send that to him as like a character
Hmm.
study, and then he would say, "Yeah, go ahead," and then I would sort of try and frame them in in some sort of action scene. And usually he let me run um, with what I came up with. There weren't. I'm trying to remember if he gave me any direction. I think usually it was more or less like, hey, can we put this type of demon in, or can we put this type of monster in with them? But usually he gave me pretty. It was it's a pretty good working relationship when I can send him a couple of sketches and he can just say, yeah, that looks good. Go with it.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, one of my players in my ongoing Hyperborea game picked up Zotis way back at the for actually so that campaign when he started on that last year's No Texas RPG Con, it's gone like over a year now, which is pretty cool. That sort of drop in,
That's
drop out idea I had, and
yeah, it's neat.
someone picked up Zotis, the Atlantean. He is a Atlantean purloiner, so it's a kind of a cleric thief type of
Right,
character.
right.
Yeah, so so now unlike in this picture, our Zotis wears like a broad coat because you can do anything with Hyperborea. That's the
Sure.
amazing thing, right? So they found like a sunken 16th century French vessel, well, French in
Okay.
quotation marks, and he found has a broad coat and a like a I think it's a tricorn hat, so you can
Oh yeah,
imagine.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it's really
Yeah, I
fun. It's
think
really good. But then
Zodus was one of the original characters as well,
yeah, yeah, it's really
fighting
neat.
the big demon and all that. So
Right. Yeah. So I think probably our listeners would like to hear the development of um that portrait of the on the Heptomancer product.
oh yeah.
Yeah, so how did that because that's very different, right? That's not just like the character sketches and the ink pen and ink black and white. That's like a some full on painting, right? Is that correct or
Yeah, so that's it's digital, but I started off as I normally do with pencil and paper.
um
And I actually have the sketch around here somewhere.
yeah.
But so it started off pencil. I kind of Jeff gave me the idea. He's like, "Hey, we've got this sacrifice scene. It's up on
Mhm.
this dais, surrounded by water, and uh, we want to make that the cover." And it basically started off with, "Hey, here's the Frazetta drawing, and can you do
Mm.
something similar to this?"
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And so I was absolutely able to do that. And it some people go, well, you're just copying Frazetta. Some people say, well, no, it's an homage. I mean, I think most artists will say that an homage is an homage.
Yeah.
This certainly wasn't copying Frazetta. Um, it was basically saying, hey, Frazetta did something great, and a book publisher wants to mimic that.
Yeah.
But I do have that. I'll turn my video on real quick, and I do have that sketch. Maybe you want to see it.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's really neat.
So that's the pencil sketch. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And there's a few things that changed, obviously, when you go from pencil to digital. But
Mhm. Yeah. So, well, I mean, definitely the Frazetta doesn't have the monsters or demons that are in the foreground and
right, I think in his foreground, he's just got some tentacles,
yeah.
some like octopod type tentacles and
Hmm.
that was the other thing is Jeff wanted those specific demons in there because they play a
Part in
role in
the
the module.
spoiler.
Yep. Yeah, right. Spoiler.
Yeah.
And then it's a matter of working with colors, right? And
Okay.
once you get it, scanned in as a pencil drawing, and then I'm doing all of that digitally on my computer. Um, it's working with colors and making sure that everything sort of jives color wise. Um,
Mhm. Yeah, that's cool. It's
and
really fun painting. Again, it's
yeah,
like things are you can hear, I mean, I don't know, me. I can hear the splashing of the creatures through the water. I can hear the yell of the warrior who's going to save their companion. Maybe the chanting
right, right.
of the sorcerer there. Yeah, so it's in motion, it's dynamic. Same with Seawolf's Daughter, with the night guns, right, flying all around,
The
and
Night Gaunts.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then the
Yeah,
the
the Seawolf Daughter is a little different because that was
yeah,
all acrylic. So that's
oh,
paint.
okay,
That's
oh, neat. That's
actual
a painting,
paint.
yeah,
That's a painting.
yeah.
And that original painting sold, but I
Mm.
have some prints of that. But yeah,
Okay,
and so with
awesome.
going back to Oblation Slab of the Hepatomancer, the way the greens kind of cut across
Hmm.
and the reds, and then the
Yeah, I
blue
see
in the
that.
background sort of
Hmm.
draws your eye across the stark white
Hmm.
figure. And that was all done before Jeff put the pale blue Hyperborea over the top of it.
Hmm.
And he, I think, just ripped off of the blue in the background, and that really makes the whole
Makes it
cover
pop, yeah.
kind of come alive. But
Hmm.
you can see there's sort of a cross play between the reds and the greens.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
you know, but yeah, and, you always got to throw skulls in there and candles.
Right. Yeah, it's not
But
Hyperborea or Warhammer Fantasy unless there's skulls in it, right?
yeah, that's right.
Or
The interesting
Warhammer.
thing about this is we actually started off with a male hero, just
Hmm.
like in the Frazetta piece,
Yeah.
and we also started off with a naked female on the Oblation Slab, but that got changed
Hmm.
for reasons.
Yeah.
But the female warrior came in, and then we decided that we are going to make that Andromeda. So that's actually also Andromeda, the paladin.
Oh, neat.
Without full armor, he wanted her to be like a lower level than when
Hmm.
she's in full armor. So that's actually a lower level Andromeda than what you'd see in, say, the 2E player's handbook. Or now, I guess he did transpose that over to the
Over
3E.
to, yeah.
So
Okay, yeah,
we
there we
kind of
go.
wanted to keep the same sort of theme, and so there's the same characters are seen over and over again.
Yeah,
Um,
that's neat.
and that's also in the borders. In the borders, there's all of the original characters from 2E uh, are in all of the borders as well. You'll see them kind of pop in
And the
occasionally.
borders, you mean like
The 3E borders.
oh, right. Yeah. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
cool. So so you've been able to you run though too, right? I
I
know you
do.
yeah, so yes. So how does how do those like mesh your running the games versus and drawing for the games? I mean, like maybe you're yeah, that's a I'll leave that open as much as you
Yeah.
want.
When I get ready to run a game, I always start out with a visual. What do I want? I'm a very visual. My creativity is off of the visuals. And
Oh,
so what do I?
so I have a question to interject then. So you
Sure.
drew so I got to play in your marathon. So Jeff Talanian at North
Yep.
Texas, if people don't know, runs like a marathon game, and Dell got up and ran encounter like we do an hour and a half, and so you drew that scene like as a visual first, is that?
Bits and pieces of it. So like the mantis shrimp warriors, I've
Yeah.
got a sketch that I drew
Hmm.
just as sort of a warm up, and then I was like, hey, how do I make a mantis shrimp into sort of a mandroid?
Hmm.
And so I started with a sketch, and then I was like, okay, well, how am I going to get these into my game? Um, and so, yeah, I'll usually start off with a couple of different sketches,
Hmm.
um, and then I'll start to develop the game from there. Um, see, I'm trying to remember the Mandroids that I was talking about. You're probably not
We
um,
didn't get that far.
familiar with. Yeah,
But I can
trying to
imagine
remember.
I can imagine, art pieces maybe of those statues.
Yeah, okay, yep, that's right. You guys played in that one,
Yeah.
so
Oh, different. Okay. You did a
that's
different one. Yeah.
yeah. So
Mm.
yeah, so that's the other unique thing about me is I don't run just Hyperborea. I run Hexaborea. It's kind of my own thing, and it's a hex crawl in Hyperborea.
Okay.
And
That's cool.
um, and so when I'm developing Hexaborea, which basically what you played in was a small little segment of one of the dungeons
Hmm.
from Hexaborea, I'll usually do drawings. So this one that you played in was, an aquatic themed.
Yeah.
One with seahorses and eels, and I did. I drew some seahorses and I drew some eels, and I like, how do I get these interpreted into a game, and
Mm,
how do these, somewhat mundane creatures become monsters?
yeah.
Because that's ultimately what you're going to face. If you were to run into a regular seahorse, you'd basically
Mm,
flick it with your finger and it'd be gone, right?
yeah.
But if it's a giant seahorse that comes to life out of a wooden statue and floats in air as if it's, swimming, and
Hmm.
then has an electrical shock to it, that's the that's how the monster becomes, right? So
Yeah, that's cool. That's really neat. Yeah, I was going to comment on Seawolf's Daughter too, because you could hear, I mean, again, going back to that theme of things in motion, emotions that you can feel, like the one of the daughters or one of the figures in the work kind of screaming over the fallen her fallen companion. And then you see the warriors on the boat as they fight uh the night gaunts, also yelling and screaming and doing stuff. It's good. I love it. I can hear it. I guess that's
yes,
what's really neat to me. I don't know if you've ever heard
that's
that.
cool.
I don't know if you've
No,
ever
I
heard
haven't.
that, and maybe I'm weird, but I can hear it. I think that's
No,
really, instead of just like a pose, unlike unlike those you know 19th century tin tacks that you see where they're all very stoic and they're
sure,
posing and
sure.
you can't hear anything and can't even breathe. These are like going, and I think that's very neat and it's very
Yeah, this one
thematic
came
through all your
about.
artwork.
I appreciate that. Yeah, this one came about very similar. Jeff was like, "Hey, I want to do this one about the Seawolf's daughter, and I want a ship in it." Right?
Hmm.
He was big on ships at that point, because I think one of Ghost Ship of the Desert Dunes
Yeah.
was maybe just before this one, and so it was very big on ships. So he had this ship in mind. That he wanted to see,
Hmm.
and but he also wanted this shield maiden who's in the foreground here, the with a spear, and that spear is a special spear in the module as well. And so he wanted all this stuff, but then the history behind it is the younger female holding the shield
Hmm.
is actually Gunhilder, who shows up in the
In the
module
module, yeah.
uh, as well as a grown up shield maiden. And so
Hmm.
she kind of picks up the mother's shield, and becomes the shield maiden, uh, because the mother died fighting these night gods. So
Yeah.
yeah, the whole story behind it is, this is a scene from, you know many years prior to Gunhilder becoming a shield maiden,
Hmm.
and it's sort of the, the origin behind her. So yeah,
That's
but
cool.
I'd never heard anybody say that they could hear my scenes, and that's really interesting. I suppose now I get more into the feels of it. Like, I feel like this is a super cold scene. Like, everything's gray and cold, and um, but I could definitely see where you could say, yeah, you hear the wind blowing and the night gods,
Well,
looking
even in
past,
some of your monsters, like
scream.
the ghoul and the specter, you can hear them growling, or I don't know if specters growl or hiss, I don't know, but whatever. But they're like their mouths are open and they're like yelling or saying something. I think that's kind of cool to
Yeah,
me.
I never really wanted to grow up and draw like JC Penney's models, right? Like the clothing
Yeah.
models where they're just kind of standing there. I always want to have some sort of action in it, for
Hmm.
sure.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the portraits are stills, but even then, I mean, I think there's, you can see the sternness in Nicomedes, and I think I feel like there's a smirk on Zodus. Maybe that's just me. Me with the
Yeah.
me kind of projecting the player because he's kind of that tricksy kind of player type. Well, Gregor definitely has like a funny expression on him, like, "Ha, I know better than you." Yeah, that's cool.
Right, right.
That's good. That's neat. So,
Yeah,
so
thanks.
do you maybe we can who you said you did some stuff for other companies as well. I don't know if we've been focusing on Hyperborea because that's where I kind of am
Sure.
familiar more with your artwork. But who else have you worked for? Is it a different process? And how has that gone? Who else have
It's
you
oh
like submitted, or I don't know, been commissioned? I guess that's the proper. Is that the proper term? I don't know what the terminology is even.
yeah, commissioned usually.
Yep.
I've worked for Frog God Games.
Oh.
I've worked for Goodman Games on
Mhm.
both their DCC line and their 5E line.
Hmm.
Um, no covers, just all interior black and whites. I've
Hmm.
worked for a number of smaller um, independent publishers, uh, Dungeoneers Guild Games, Expeditious Retreat Press, BRW Games. I worked on Blueholm, which is from the guy's name is Michael Thomas, but I'm mixing the Dreamscape Designs.
Hmm.
I'm uh, let's see, I've worked for David Beatty from
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
Weird
We're for
Frontiers.
cheers. Yeah.
Um, yep, I've worked with Direct Sun and a couple of YouTube channels. One is Old School Epics and one is Dragon Shade Studios. I worked for Eric Tenkar, Tenkar's Tavern. I've
Hmm.
done some of that stuff. Um, Fight On Magazine. Let's see, Gamewick Games.
A lot.
Um, Greg Gillespie from Barrow Maze
Okay.
and Dragon Slayer. Yeah, I've worked for
You're
a
very
lot.
busy. Very
I
busy,
actually
very
worked for
prolific. Yeah. It's
with
awesome.
Gygax during Gygax magazine run, and some of his Okyram stuff. Shinobi 27, Skeeter Green. Yeah, I mean, I could go on forever. I've worked on a lot of projects. Since about 2012, 2013. So what is that? 12 or 13 years.
Hmm.
Um, it's been good, and I retired from the fire department in March, and now it's like a
Full
sort of
time?
a full-time part-time gig,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
So
That's great.
yep, I'm very blessed, that's for sure.
That's cool. But so you're gonna do some writing too, as well as any
um
design in the future? Maybe we could talk about new projects, like any game
yeah,
design that
let's
you might be doing, since you said you're working on like a hex crawl or what do you call it?
it, it's
Hyper hex?
Hexaborea.
Hexaborea. Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's kind of what I'm doing. I took a little section on the big map and I said, I'm gonna make a little island crawl. So yeah, it's always fun to do. It's so wide open. I really like what Jeff has done. He's giving us a lot of freedom to explore, you know? Yeah, there's places
Absolutely.
and the modules well I do like the modules and I collected them all. Um not only because of the artwork, but because Jeff is a good game designer and the people that he's gotten
Absolutely.
to write are like Chainsaw, etc. The ones who just did Oblation and Thousand Eyes and
Yeah,
Vanished
Joe
Skies.
Mack.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, and
yeah.
yeah, and who's that? Joe what?
Joe Mack.
Yep.
Joe Mac Macaroni or
Oh yeah.
Massaro. I'm not sure
Yep.
exactly. I'm going to butcher his name, so I'm just going to call him Joe Mack because that's what everybody calls him.
Right. Yep.
Big Joe Mac. But yeah, so
Oh,
I
and Joe
guess I lost
Salvatore
what you were
also. Oh,
asking.
Joe Macarone. Yeah, Joe Macarone. Uh,
Yep,
yeah, he was there too. I got to meet him finally. Yeah, he was.
he was. Yeah, Joe's a
Yeah,
great guy. Yep.
yeah. So yeah, and yeah, Joe Salvatore, who I worked with in developing Reaver. So
Okay.
yeah,
Very cool.
he
Yeah, I
he
worked
did
with
the.
Joe way back.
Oh, you did. Yeah, he did the Bane of the Serpent one. What's his?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. The
Coil of the. Yeah, I'll
trying to
find it.
remember the name of the, but I worked with him on his Eldritch Horror game,
Oh yeah, cool. Fane of the Coiled Goddess. That's what it is. Yeah,
Fane of the Quell guys. Yeah.
yeah.
I worked with him on his Eldritch Horrors game, which I think is called Eldritch Tales.
Eldritch
I
Tales. It
did
is.
all
It
of the
is.
classes in there, and those were unique in that he wanted just pencils.
Oh
And
yeah,
so
that's
I
true.
did some pencil drawings of all of his character classes. And then I did a couple of interior work for him as well. Yeah, that was a fun project.
Yeah, it's good. Oh, so you have delved in drawing the mythos before. I see.
Oh yeah.
And icons. Yeah. Cool. All right. All right. So design, game design. Are you doing any of that or?
I'm always toying with ideas on game
Mm-hmm.
design, mostly because I run my own, thing in Hyperborea, and
Mm-hmm.
it seems to me as though there is a shortage of good hex crawl type processes that are easy, that are fast, um, that doesn't take a too much out of the DM as he's running them, and you don't have to stop and wait for, the players don't have to stop and wait for the GM or the DM to, come up with something on the fly.
Hmm.
Although I do a lot of that with when I run Hexaborea at conventions, I've come up with a system that I allow the players to roll. And so I've been
Okay.
doing some game design with that. And so that, it's similar to when you run initiative, you start
Hmm.
with somebody either to the right or the left, and you work your way around the table as they win or lose initiative. This is similar in that as we transition from one hex to another hex, I have them roll a series of dice, and it gets me
Hmm.
going on what I call the charts. And then I've devised these charts. I used a lot of the free resources from Hyperborea on his website, and these ones in particular were developed by Ben Ball, who's just a fantastic designer. And I used some of that, but I centered my hex crawl in the gibbering fields, which I don't know if you know about the gibbering fields, but there's all kinds of odd steam vents and geysers and a lot of geological um, features in the gibbering fields of Hyperborea. So I sort of took a small little segment of the gibbering fields and I placed a um, a civilization there and
Hmm.
uh, buried a bunch of forgotten snakemen, chambers and all kinds of stuff in there. And so, but what I wanted to do really was I wanted to do an overland crawl.
Hmm.
And so I developed this system. Um, and so I don't know where I'm going to go with it as far as publishing. I've been running Hexaborea now for I think 3 years at 3 or 4 cons a year.
Nice.
And then I just got done running it for my home group. We play on Saturday nights. Just got done running it for them in a campaign format because I hadn't ever run it in a campaign format,
Hmm.
and I wanted to try it there.
Oh, so like, so
Um,
then it's like it's kind of a like they just crawl the hexes and then they get go up in level and all that. Yeah, yeah. As
yeah,
opposed to
absolutely.
just giving them
As a
pre-gens and yeah,
Right, right, yeah, it's a lot different. I mean, have probably ever run both a con game and a home group game. That
yeah.
running a campaign is a whole lot more involved than running a con game. You can come up with two, three, four, maybe five scenarios in a con game, and if you get to one of them, usually that's half your segment. If you get to another one, that's another half your segment of a 4 hour block. And
Hmm.
so you can play test those little segments, but you
Yeah.
can't get the whole
The
campaign
whole
feel
thing,
from it.
right?
So when you're running a campaign, I feel like you've got to be a lot more prepared. You've got to have a lot more background, especially during a hex crawl. And with my hex crawls, I like to explore as much as the DM as the players do. And so it's all just random for me too. And then
Hmm.
whatever my charts um, spark in my creativity is what they get. And I'll usually have some characters, some stats for encounters, but I'll usually come up with something wacky on the fly to throw at it as well.
Hmm.
And so that's the hard piece to develop because, and I've run it so much now that I've got a bunch of background that I wouldn't have to necessarily develop, all of it on the fly. It's been developed over the last 3 or so years.
Yeah, that's cool.
Um, but I don't know if it's publish worthy yet. I'm not really a writer. I'm more of an artist, so I might have to have a ghostwriter or something.
Yeah, that's cool. But still, I think the running, I think if I were artistically inclined, I think running it, then you're like, oh, because I always think, oh, it'd be great to show the scene, as a piece of art, when like when they defeat a foe or something like that, where there's a
Yeah,
very spectacular moment in play. It seemed like it'd be a nice
yeah.
frame
So
frame
usually
in a comic book or something.
What I'll do with Hexaborea is I will have some of that drawn out, and I will show somebody, this is the monster or this is the scene.
Hmm.
So I usually do come up. I usually have
That's
some,
neat.
player handouts or whatever that I will give the players as we're running. Um,
Well, that's gonna be a beautiful
Especially
book
at
when you
conventions.
do that if you ever get.
Yeah,
That's gonna be pretty
if I
neat.
ever get a chance to. I'm so busy now with with commissions. I think I'm
Commissions,
working
yeah.
on 3 or 4 projects at a time right now.
Hmm.
I'm working with Black Oak Games
Who is
right
that? I
now,
I
and
didn't
I'm
get
Bl- Black
Black
Oath Games,
Black Oath.
Black Oath
Okay.
Entertainment.
Okay.
Um, I'm working with them right now. I'm working with James Ponzanel
Hmm.
on Netcrawl, which is a DCC. It's like adventuring inside a computer.
Oh, cool.
So it's a little futuristic, computerized kind of thing. I'm
Hmm.
working with him on that. I'm also anticipating more work with Mythmere Games on Osric,
Oh,
which
cool.
is the
Yeah.
old school
Yep.
something reference. It's
Yeah.
basically 1E rewritten,
Right.
and that
Yeah.
was, that's like that's another dream come true. Is just working with Mythmere
Matt.
Games because
Yeah. Matt Finch. Yeah.
Matt Finch is the what they call the father of the old school
Hmm.
Renaissance Revolution,
Yeah.
whatever you want to call it.
Hmm.
Um, with his primer for old school games, and I just happened to be walking by Matt at GaryCon one year, and I said, "Hey Matt, I'm Dell. I'm an illustrator. I've worked with Jeff Delaney before, and I said, hey, I'd love to work on something with you." And I gave him my business card, and that was it. And then like a month later, he's like emailing me, "Yeah, I love your stuff. I want you to work with me." And so I
Oh,
worked with
cool.
him. I actually worked with him when he worked for Fraud God Games
Hmm.
on the Swords and Wizardry box set. It was
Yeah.
the small digest size box set.
Yep. Yep.
And then I worked with him when he developed Mythmere Games' version of Swords and Wizardry Complete. And I
Hmm.
did the cover insignias for that. I did all the classes for that. I did some monsters, some interiors, and then as he spun up Tome
Hmm.
of Adventure Design, I worked on some of that stuff with him as well. So yeah, it's been a good run. I'm really working with some of the best folks in the industry, some of the nicest people, and I'm like a kid, when I'm around them because it's just amazing that I even get to work with these guys and
That's really
gals.
cool. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, super
Actually,
blessed for sure.
yeah. Yeah, well, that's really great. I mean, I really would look forward to, continuing to see how your Hexaborea develops. I think that's pretty cool. Um, Definitely as a
Yeah,
process,
it's
and
for sure, for sure. It's fun. I love running at conventions. I love running for people. It seems to be a hit a lot of the times.
mhm.
You know, I think what makes it great is the spontaneity of it because I usually will have a dungeon laid out, the final
Mm.
dungeon. I'll have that sort of figured out what they're going to get into, and but how they get into it, and if all I'm doing the whole time is just throwing out little nuggets, and if they decide to chase that nugget, then it'll take them somewhere, and if they don't, then we'll just keep crawling along. So it's been fun. um it's a
Mm.
lot different than actually running through a prepared adventure because
Yeah.
really I just have maybe a handful of dungeons and somehow some way they're going to get in there, right? And then overland travel
Hmm.
um and that. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm trying to I mean, I guess my philosophy is maybe changing uh less towards running something that's prepared, though I love reading them and I love seeing them and I will run them. I'm not averse to it, but I think trying to develop something where uh there's decision making by the players that's meaningful, right? So so I'm searching for like player agency.
Yeah,
And I think
absolutely. I
and
think
let them
that's
go where they're going to go. You have things where they can go if they follow the hook or follow the rumor, but then you give them multiple, and that's kind of the design, and that's what I love when I ran. When you played last year, is I just had these rumors and you guys followed them, and then we had a little like
yeah.
4 hour adventure.
Yeah, that's
A
an awesome
few, right?
adventure too that we ran through. Yeah. Yep.
So that
That's
was really
awesome.
cool. And yeah, and then what in the campaign play, then something like that has like ramifications, right? So like like a pride with you, like on the map, they don't know what's out there, but then all of a sudden we find this ruin. We found like in that when we play, we have the cenote, and we got to deal with that at some point. Something might happen because of that. So I think that it just it's kind of like a cooperative campaign development. I really enjoy that. And I think my funnest experience, other than the marathon, because that was really cool, was running. Like I ran this like the Shadow of the Wizard, and I just gave them the opening scene, and then after that they could go in any direction. It was less of a point crawl and more of like a mini sandbox. And I think that was very, for me, running is very satisfying, and I'm pretty sure the players enjoyed it too. So it's a good.
Yeah, no,
So I like that kind of stuff.
that's how I sort of feel about it too. Is I love running. I love being surprised when I'm running by what the
Hmm.
players do. I love being able to sort of riff off of what their decision is, or if they decide to run or fight. I like the ability to sort of create on the fly
Hmm.
like that. I don't get to do that a lot in my work because usually it's a scene that I have to draw. Here, draw this scene, or here, draw this monster, right?
Hmm.
I think that when I'm running Hexaborea, especially, I get to create so much. I get to create the landscape. I get to create the feel, the smells, the weather. I get to create. It's just like this creativity dump. And these players, I hope, are along for this awesome ride. And everybody just seems like they just love it, and that's why I do it, right? I mean, that's why we do this cooperative thing called gaming. Is
Yeah.
it shouldn't just be one guy trying to railroad you through an adventure from A to B to C to D. It should be, hey, I'm going to give you about six different scenarios, and you guys
Hmm.
go, and I'm going to be just as surprised as you are when you get
Yeah.
there. You know,
Yeah.
and that's, I think. Go ahead.
No, I finished your thought. I was gonna add something to that,
And I
but
think that's why it goes into dungeon design that way too, right?
mm,
Is giving them plenty of opportunities to explore a little bit, right? I mean, a dungeon in my mind is really no different than being out in the middle of a sandbox. It should be, hey, you can go anywhere. I'm going to put you in a room where there's five exits. I don't
yeah,
care which way you go. They might link up together, they might not.
yeah,
But, I think that's and then give them something interesting down each way, right? Like give
right,
them, a sound or a smell or a light or something that's going to give them sort of some sort of decision point. Like, hey, do we want to go near the sound? Do we want
mhm,
to go to the light? Do we want to go towards where it smells this way or that way? And
right,
so I think that if you can, if you can give them a challenge,
mm,
like a mental decision making challenge, and they go with that, it's a bonus for both of you, I think, both
yeah,
the
I think
player and the
so.
GM.
Yeah, I did learn. I learned a lot in that short span of time, that hour and a half, where I got to run because I love it when the players like ask questions and what's this? What do I feel like this way? What do I feel like this way? And you're right, smells
Mm-hmm.
and if they do some magical investigation or whatever, and then okay, we're gonna make a decision to go this way because this seems interesting to me, or whatever.
Yeah.
So I thought that's really neat how that kind of plays out in a session. It's just kind of
Yeah, I felt mine was almost against what I normally would, and what I just said was mine was more of a railroad, right? You started in a room, there was only one way to go.
yeah.
You went to another big room, there was only one way to go. There were
Hmm.
some challenges along the way, trying to figure out how to get up to the secret passage and all that
Hmm.
kind of thing. Um, but I only had a couple hours to run.
Yeah, yeah.
So, in that dungeon that you guys went through in the open was only a very small part of
I'm
one
sure the whole thing. Yeah,
dungeon.
I can imagine.
So it's difficult when you're constrained by time, right? If we could just play for until we get tired, like we used to when we were kids, right? Like you
Yeah,
could
yeah,
explore so much more, and there'd be a whole lot more challenges and a whole lot more memories made during the game, um,
yeah.
because you just had an infinite amount of time to play. And as adults, unfortunately, we're constrained by almighty
Constrained,
time,
yeah.
right?
That's true. Someone needs to develop pocket dimension technology. So,
Yeah, right.
all right. Well, since you are an artist, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about your feelings on this growing trend of AI art. How do you feel about it? What can we do about it? What do you do about it? Or how do you respond to it?
I think it's a difficult question, but I think that, for me, you're talking to a traditional artist.
Hmm.
I do very little digitally. I do everything with my hands, pen and ink, pencil, traditional tools on paper, um, paint.
Hmm.
And so I don't really feel a need to use AI. I'm not going to discredit anybody who does use AI. I think that there's going to be a point, and we're already starting to see this, especially on social media or any media, you're starting to wonder, is that real or is
Right.
it AI? Is this picture of these two guys fighting real or is it AI? And so I think it's going to cross some barriers and boundaries, and we're going to start to question everything, right?
Hmm.
Because it's going to become more and more realistic. And it's already become so realistic. Like, back in the early days of AI was like, oh, I can spot that AI art because it's got six fingers, right?
Yeah.
Or it just doesn't look right. Well, they're getting better with it. And so
Hmm.
it's only going to get better. I'll never use it. I won't use it in my art. I won't use it to frame a scene. I won't use it because I think it's a crutch, in my opinion. And if you're a true artist, you should be able to create with your hands. Um, and I think this same sort of defense was brought up with digital art when things like Photoshop and Clip Studio Paint came around, and people were, painting on a tablet. You're still using a tactile,
Hmm.
um, art brush. You're drawing on a screen, and sure, it might be digital. There was a big pushback, digital art. No, nobody wants digital art, and there still is, I think, to digital art. I think AI is so far beyond digital art. Like, there are great digital artists, and they are beautiful pieces of work. I mean, for instance, the Oblation Slab. I did
Hmm.
almost all of that digitally. Um,
Hmm.
just the way my time constraints and everything else. Um, but I didn't just type in a few keystrokes and come up with a cover. And I think that's the difference.
Hmm.
Um, you know, if let's see, um, if Fritz Lieber, um, wrote a scene and it came out with an AI picture, we'd go, oh, Fitz Lieber, he's a writer. He's not really an artist, but it's a neat looking scene.
Hmm.
Um, I think it just doesn't track as well, right? It just doesn't to me,
Hmm.
and I'm sure that it's AI is going to get way better. Um, but for me in the industry that I'm working within, I just don't see a need for it. I think that there's going to be a lot of it out there being used because it's cheap and it's free. Um, it's just not for me. Um, I tend to skip over it. I tend to block it on social media. I don't like to see it at all.
Yeah.
So
Cool. Cool. Well, thank you for answering that question. So is there anything else, anything you want to maybe projects you kind of outlined some, but anything in particular you're excited about that's coming around the pipe? And after that, we'll just let you get on to your writing, I mean your drawing and writing. I know you're
yeah,
writing.
I got a couple. I know that I mentioned Mythmere Games and Osric. That's coming.
Yep.
I'll be doing some work for that. I did a cover for one of their modules. You
Mm,
may have seen that at North Texas. I was showing some people on my phone some
mm,
pictures of it. And I posted some images on social media as well now.
cool.
My YouTube channel is out there. It's Del Teigler Illustrator on YouTube.
Mhm,
Um, and it's Teigeler, pronounced Teigler. And so I do my process videos on YouTube.
oh,
I've got
nice.
stock art on Drive Through RPG as well. That's under Mavfire Games. So if anybody's out there looking for stock art, cheap art, we're talking about AI and cheap. Well, stock art is still done by hand and
Hmm.
scanned in. And so if you are a Drive Through RPG publisher and you want some cheap Del Teigler stock art, it's there for you. That I am trying to upload 10 to 12 pieces a month to build my catalog up.
Hmm.
Let's see. Oh, I'm remiss to mention Pulp Hummock Press, Gods of the Forbidden North. I'll be working on volume 3 of that.
Oh,
And so
nice.
that's going to be, I did a bunch of pieces on volume 2, and I'll be in volume 3 as well. I talked to him at North Texas as well. So yeah, a couple of projects.
So,
The last one that I'll mention is sort of a maybe. It's way out there, but Blackblade Publishing, um, they are going to start writing some adventure modules, Alan Groh and John Hirschberger. And they have asked me to do some illustrating for them. So that is a little bit further down the road, but that'll be it. And then, of course, I'm sure Jeff will contact me back for some more Hyperborea art.
yeah, yeah. I know he's got
Yeah,
some interesting projects in the pipeline, so
he
that's
does.
great.
Yep.
That's great. Well, Del, it's great talking to you and learning about your process and your art and how you got to where you what you're doing, which is very fascinating. I am a big fan. It's very evocative, like I described, and it was also so great to be able to play in a game that you run and to play in one of these in this role-playing game thing with you at the table as well. So it's been great to meet you at North Texas, which apparently is the big networking hub, for our hobby. So you guys who are
Yes, absolutely. North
creatives and
Texas are sort of
artists, yeah, you creatives, you should go there to get all these contacts.
absolutely. It's a great con. I used to go to Gary Con. I sort of got away from Gary Con. I got a little bit big for my britches.
Mm.
Um, I just didn't. It just got a little too big. I'm kind of a small crowd kind
Small
of
con,
guy.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So what cons do you go to? I guess it'd be the last for you.
I Yep, yep. I've been to North Texas RPG Con,
Yeah.
Gary Con, um, UConn, which is in Ann Arbor outside of the University of Michigan because I live in Michigan.
Hmm.
Grand Con in Grand Rapids, Michigan. That one I plan on going to every year. It's a smaller con. It's more of a tabletop con, but they have an RPG section.
Oh, cool.
It's a good little con, Grand Con.
Hmm.
Um, and then I really want to go to Origins next year. I didn't make it this year. I really wanted to, but I just couldn't with life. And then there's a new con in Kalamazoo, Michigan. It's called Wizard Con,
Oh,
and
wow, fascinating.
it had 300 attendees,
Whoa.
and it was a good little con. Yep. So, and then I have another con that I may be going to. That's going to be called. It's a new con called OSR Con,
Hmm.
just like the the games that we play, OSR Con.
Yeah, yeah.
And that is run by Tony Morita. It's new. It's going to be, I think, in 2026 in the New Hampshire, Massachusetts area.
Oh, cool. That should be
So,
fun.
yep.
All right. Well,
So
thank you so
he's asked me
much.
to be a special guest, and I think
Oh,
I'll go out to that one. So
nice. And
we'll see how it goes.
do you bring stuff to you bring your work or do you just go there
I
to
usually bring
network?
a couple of portfolios. Yep.
Okay.
I usually bring a full size 11 by 14 portfolio, and then I
Hmm.
bring two littler portfolios, usually a 9 by 12.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I usually have my stuff, but I always have my phone with me if people want to see color work or
Yeah, yeah.
anything else. I always got that. So,
Well,
and I
great.
am on DeviantArt and ArtStation. You can find me down there.
Yeah.
So
Well, definitely put the links to your YouTube and a lot of the yeah, I think I found your art station and I'll put those links in there so people can check out your stuff.
perfect. Yeah. Oh, and I have t-shirts up on Printify as well.
Oh, do you
So if you
really?
look at,
Ooh,
yep.
I have to
So
check those out.
if you go to Printify Del Teigler, you'll
Hmm.
find me.
Nice. I
So
put that link in the show notes too. We always
awesome.
love wearing our
Thank you,
t-shirts.
Carl.
Thank you so much,
Yeah,
Del, and I'll see you at a con sometime. Um, and hopefully to catch you online at some point too.
absolutely. It was good to meet you again and
Yep.
talk to you and hang out with you at North Texas.
Yeah.
Take
Thank
care.
you. Thank you so much.